Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel for another history video. I wanted to film some kind of Christmas themed video and asked on Twitter what you guys wanted to see, and the overwhelming response was for me to cover that time when Christmas was actually illegal in the UK and for a bit in the USA as well, thanks to our good friend Oliver Cromwell. Kinda, anyway. People like to blame it on him and his reputation continues to precede him. Nowadays, Christmas is a celebration across the world for many people, whether or not they consider themselves to be Christian. Love or hate it, there's no denying that it's one of the biggest dates in the calendar. Some people consider Christmas to be a bit commercialised, too stressful. Some people consider it to be the most wonderful time of year. Stick me in the latter category there. But regardless of your feelings, can you imagine Christmas being illegal? Not just non-existent, illegal. You're not allowed to celebrate. But first I want to thank Function of Beauty for sponsoring this week's video. After seeing so many people talk about this company, I was desperate to try it, so I was so excited when I saw an email in my inbox asking to work together. My super long hair is literally my baby, it's my pride and joy, it's how I'm known. I'm Georgia with the hair down to her butt. I'm very protective over my hair, and a completely customised product like Function of Beauty is something I never knew I needed. It's a totally different experience than your generic hair care. You can ensure that the products you use target your specific hair needs whilst getting to customise the look and smell to what you like best. For Function of Beauty to make the best product for your hair, you simply have to go through a very simple questionnaire where you specify your hair type, hair structure, any goals you have for your hair and more. The process is incredibly easy beginning to end, and I loved it because I love a questionnaire. I ordered with the goals to fix split ends, volumise, control oil, soothe my scalp and strengthen. Actually, for me, the most difficult bit was deciding which scent I wanted. In the end, I went for the shea butter and vanilla, but there was a lot of back and forth between that and the nude peach. It literally smells so good. I need to take a sniff now. It smells amazing. My hair smells so good all the time. I also got a deep conditioning hair mask when I really want to spoil my hair. I'm a huge fan of Function of Beauty. I honestly cannot see myself going back to generic products after using this. My hair feels so healthy and nourished. It's not getting oily anywhere near as quickly as usual, and it just smells so good. Like, can you tell how much better my hair looks right now? I also got the custom body wash and lotion as well in the delicious pear and apple scent, which again is customised to provide the moisture that my skin needs. Function of Beauty has no nasty ingredients. They don't use any parabens, sulfates, GMOs or toxins, and they're 100% vegan and cruelty-free. The products are fully customisable with more than 54 trillion different combinations, so you can 100% find the right hair care for you. And it means that you can change the formula with each order you make to keep up with changes in the season, or new haircuts, or if you dye your hair. You can get 20% off your first set with Function of Beauty when you click the link in my bio. I highly recommend. So I think to really understand how Christmas came to be outlawed, you need to have an understanding of Puritanism. If you want to delve right into what Puritanism really was, I did a deep dive in my video on the Salem witch trials, which, if I remember, I will link in the description box and on screen right now, so I would highly recommend going to watch that. The definition in the Oxford Dictionary reads, "The beliefs or principles of a group of English Protestants of the late 16th and 17th centuries who regarded the reformation of the Church under Elizabeth I as incomplete and sought to simplify and regulate forms of worship." Puritans were basically extreme Protestants who wanted to purify the Church and eliminate basically anything touched by the Catholics. The Puritans were very intense people, and in their eyes, Christianity and worshipping God was pretty much the only thing that should matter. It was mostly the Puritans who migrated over to join the early colonies of the New World, America. As I'm sure we all know, Christmas celebrates the birth of Jesus. But as I'm also sure we all know, Jesus was not considered to have actually been born on the 25th of December. It's still a source of much discussion, but most scholars actually think he was born in the spring or maybe even in the autumn. But there were two other pretty big non-Christian celebrations held around the end of December. The pagans celebrated, or I guess still do celebrate, the winter solstice around the 21st to the 23rd of December, marked with fires and feasts. And then there was also the more Roman festival of Saturnalia. To steal directly from my script for my Evolution of Christmas video from last year, Saturnalia was this huge annual celebration celebrating the god Saturn. The courts all closed, schools and businesses closed. It was a week-long party of feasting, drinking, singing, playing music and exchanging gifts. The wealthy gave gifts to the poor, executions were cancelled and no wars were announced during this time. The dictionary defines Saturnalia as an occasion of wild revelry or indulgence. Everyone just let loose in this week at the end of December. From as early as 217 BC, there were public Saturnalia banquets, and it seems this ran well into the AD years. Around the 4th century, Christian leaders of the time imported the festival of Saturnalia over to Christianity, hoping to wean the pagans off the celebration and onto a more Christian-appropriate celebration. It was very much a political move, and it worked. Slowly over the years, the celebration of Saturnalia merged into somewhat of the Christmas celebration that we know and love today. And in fact, a lot of Christmas celebrations back in the 17th century, where today's story is set, were very similar to how we celebrate today. Christmas was considered a public holiday, all shops and public places were closed, and there would be church services held over the 12 days of Christmas. But as you can probably imagine, this Christmas celebration merged with the pagan celebration of Saturnalia did not sit well with the Puritans when they came around eventually. Christmas should be a day of worship, not a day of celebration. And the Puritans also noted that the 25th of December was never a date that was named in the Bible. They knew the reasons why Christmas was celebrated when it was, and that was not about to fly with them. Puritans believed that Christmas was just an excuse for revelry, drunkenness, promiscuity and excess. And of course the Catholics were big fans of Christmas as well. Anything the Catholics liked was a big no-no in the eyes of the Puritans. And it wasn't just Christmas that came under fire from them. They also wanted Sundays to be stricter, and Easter and Whitsun celebrations were to be abolished as well. In the 15th century, the Puritans began to get more power, and after a couple of years of some loose guidance, Sundays were to only be strictly observed as holy days, and that no other day was to be holy, including Christmas. In June 1647, the celebrations of all were officially abolished by Parliament. In 1650, a Puritan minister took the stand to say that more souls are sent headlong to hell at Christmas than in all the rest of the year beside. A very strong stance to take. And the regular person obviously wasn't too happy about this new rule. The 12 days of Christmas was something they looked forward to every single year, just the same as people look forward to it nowadays. In Canterbury in 1647, when Christmas rolled around, the town crier proclaimed that no one was to celebrate in following with the new law. In response, crowds of people literally rioted, and the mayor and several clergymen were forced out of the town. A few months later, a very similar revolt happened in Kent in the name of King Charles I. Charles I had been king since 1625, and he just happened to take power at a time when there were a lot of questions over how the country should be governed. Charles believed in the divine right of kings, that he was mandated by God to rule the country even before his birth. He wanted to rule as he saw fit, and to add insult to injury, he actually married a Roman Catholic woman called Henrietta Maria of France. Charles saw nothing wrong with the revelry and celebration of Christmas, but he was constantly butting heads with the parliamentarians, who wanted to give Parliament control over the country for it to be run as more of a republic. Although the parliamentarians weren't exclusively Puritan, pretty much every Puritan did support their cause. Charles was just way too Catholic-leaning for their liking. And so began the English Civil War in 1642, which rather than being one war was more like 2 or 3 separate wars all fought alongside each other throughout England, Scotland, Ireland and Wales. This civil war is very different from a lot of others in that it wasn't so much an argument over who should rule, it was also about how the country should be ruled. It was a huge turning point. It was the whole Catholic versus Protestant thing finally coming to a head. I feel like I could spend an entire video talking about the Civil War, but to cut a long story short, it ended with Charles being executed in 1949, his son Charles II being exiled, and the replacement of the monarchy with the Commonwealth of England, and later the Commonwealth of England, Scotland and Wales. The monarchy was no more. One man who was a committed member of the Parliamentary Army, the Puritan-ish Parliamentary Army, was Oliver Cromwell. He was Lieutenant General, the second in command of the Eastern Association Army, and the biggest and most effective army of many in the Civil War. And then when the new Model Army was formed in 1645, he was second in command there too. Cromwell did very well in the army, and that meant he held a lot of influence. People were very, very willing to listen to him. It got to a point where there was this huge divide in Parliament about the Civil War, and they could see no end in sight. It was just going on and on and on, and nobody really knew what they wanted to happen when this war ended. Nobody knew what they wanted the outcome to be. Within regular Parliament, there was something called the Rump Parliament, which consists of about 80 members of Parliament, or MPs as we call them, who regarded themselves as the lawful Parliament of the Commonwealth of England. A number of MPs, most were members of the Rump Parliament, ended up signing the death warrant for the king, with Cromwell being the 59th person to sign this. After Charles was dead, this Rump Parliament soon abolished both the House of Lords and the institution of the monarchy. Somebody had to take charge after there was no more king though, and Oliver Cromwell was only too happy to do it. Towards the end of the Civil War, he was appointed Lord General of the Parliamentary Armed Forces, and in 1653 he would use this position to get the army to then disband the Rump Parliament. Apparently he was annoyed by the fact that it was too self-serving and way too slow for his liking. By December 1653, Cromwell took the title of Lord Protector. He was essentially the head of state during this time in place of a monarchy. But he'd disbanded the Parliament and instead ruled the country through the use of the military. England became somewhat of a dictatorship under Cromwell. Before he disbanded it, Parliament did actually offer him the crown, which he turned down, describing himself as a constable or watchman of the Commonwealth. But he was essentially monarch, he ruled the country, and Cromwell enacted a second Parliament of his in September 1656. But this video isn't about boring politics, this video is about Christmas. When Cromwell was in power, he doubled down on the anti-Christmas rules being put into action in the 40s. Like I said at the beginning of this video, whilst Cromwell is often blamed for the ban on Christmas, it was actually put into action many years before he took any power. But it was him who enacted stricter legislations like shops and businesses being ordered to stay open on the 25th of December and for the following 12 days. He ordered soldiers of the new Model Army to go and break up any illegal church services or celebrations. They would literally turn up at people's Christmas celebrations and take the food off their table because instead they should be fasting. Imagine somebody turning up to your house on Christmas Day and snatching your turkey out from underneath you. Even singing carols was outlawed during this time. There's a funny story I read on the BBC about how on the 25th of December 1656, an MP stood in the House of Commons and spoke about his anger about getting little sleep the night before because of his neighbours making preparations for this foolish day. His neighbours knew an MP lived next door and they literally didn't care. Despite Christmas being outlawed for over a decade at this point, the regular person, especially the Catholic people, refused to give it up. Plenty of people still decorated their homes with holly and rosemary. People would go out and give gifts to the poor and the young. They would attend church and eat and drink. They would even go wassailing, which is a very old-timey way of saying going carolling. People would go door to door singing and drinking, wishing people good health. Whilst a lot of things could be taken away by force, including people's turkeys, their voices could not be controlled. And these people were not scared of Oliver Cromwell. They'd been raised in a monarchy where the king or queen had divine power. They weren't scared of little old Cromwell. Even though Cromwell believed that God had put him where he was, he believed that he also had divine power. The regular person didn't really believe that. Cromwell remained as Lord Protector until he died in 1658. He was given a full state funeral and was buried at Westminster Abbey, just as every monarch before him had been as well. He was soon succeeded by his son Richard Cromwell, who held the position for just 8 months before resigning at the behest of the military. For about a year then, the Commonwealth ruled once more, but it became very clear that the Commonwealth lacked the leadership needed to run a country. So in May 1660, Charles II, son of Charles I, came back from his exile and took his rightful place on the throne. One of the first things he did was restore full Christmas celebrations, hence his nickname throughout history of the Merry Monarch. Not long after Charles II took the throne, Cromwell's body was retrieved from Westminster and he was actually tried after his death for high treason. His body, along with many others, was hung from Tyburn gallows before being beheaded. The bodies were just thrown in common graves and the heads were displayed on spikes outside of Westminster Hall, where Cromwell's head would remain for the next 24 years before it fell and was found by a soldier who hid it in his chimney for many years before eventually bequeathing it to his daughter. For years, Cromwell's head was passed around till it was eventually buried in 1960. 1960. So yay, Christmas is allowed once again. People across the UK can get back to their celebrations. But across the pond, the story was slightly different. As we know, many of the first colonies in the now USA consisted of solely Puritan people who had travelled over decades earlier. With many Puritan-only communities, they were quite easily able to abolish almost all traces of Christmas across New England. Seeing as New England was an ocean away from actual England, news travelled slowly, so they were always a little bit behind on the laws and the rules. So it wasn't until 1659 that the General Court of Massachusetts Bay Colony made it a criminal offence to publicly celebrate Christmas and officially declared that anyone found in celebration would be given a 5-shilling fine. Although as far as we're aware today, no one was actually prosecuted under this law. Most people in New England weren't interested in celebrating it anyway, although it is worth noting that the law only stood in Massachusetts and not the other states. But as the years went on, with King Charles II back in his place on the throne, there was an increasing pressure for the Puritans to relax their laws or risk losing their royal charter, essentially lose their right to govern their own affairs. By 1681, the colony repealed a lot of its laws, including the ban on Christmas. But of course, it still wasn't really celebrated in the region for many years. In fact, it wasn't until 1856 that Christmas finally became a public holiday in the state. Up until that point, a lot of businesses and schools remained open on the 25th of December. It was just business as usual. So there you go, that's how Christmas became illegal for just a few years there. Thank God those laws got repealed. I spend all year looking forward to relaxing and eating over the Christmas season. There's nothing quite like the joy that Christmas brings me. But then again, if the law hadn't got repealed, would we know any different? Probably not. We'd probably look back on Christmas as being some outdated medieval celebration. This video is at the request of a lot of you, so I hope you guys found this one interesting. And of course, make sure to check out Function of Beauty in the top line of the description down below. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye guys.